Hey everyone, it's Shanti for the Rough Cuts on Sunday. I hope you've been having a great week. It is the F1 weekend in Austin, so everything going on right now is Formula One themed. And originally I was going to talk about Life of Pi this week, which I saw last week, but I figured everyone is going to be talking about that when it comes out, so I'm just going to sort of gloss over it. It's good. Very, very visually stunning film. 3D is is very it's good. It's great 3D. It adds a little bit to the story, but the story itself doesn't really need it. But it is visually stunning. It's something that you could really appreciate in a movie theater. It's long. It's a really long movie. A lot of people that I saw it with, they just felt indifferent towards it. And because it's long. That seems to be a trend now, making really, really long movies. And the movies start to feel long, especially when you see a lot of long movies close together. But it's beautiful. The story is wonderful. Acting is spectacular. Ang Lee did a really great job with direction. So yeah, so go check this out, Life of Pi, when it comes out, I believe next week. The main film that I'm going to talk about this week, however, is One. This is another Formula One themed documentary. Some of you remember I did Senna, I think 2 years ago. It's not a follow up, it's completely different. Paul Crowder directed this one, and it's talking about the history of F1 and the safety issues and danger involved with racing and how that has changed over the last really almost century at this point in time. Pretty much all of F1 royalty was there for the premiere when I saw this. I was actually sitting with Bernie Ecclestone and like the other drivers, like Jackie Stewart, Emerson Fittipaldi, like who were all there in attendance. It was really cool. And it was interesting to see their reactions with the footage of the documentary. This is one of the only premieres that I've been. People that were in the film actually stayed and watched the entire film, and this was a long, long documentary. It was unfinished when I saw it, and like there were still some like timing cards that were up there, and they hadn't finished like the credits, things like that. But it's rough. It is really rough. Everyone seemed enthralled with it, but like Paul Crowder and then also the other producers that were there, they were talking about there's a lot of footage that's in there, and they wanted to be able to tell what was going on, and they want to be able to tell more. Yeah, you told too much. There's just way, way too much in there. Some heavy, heavy editing needs to take place. Me talking about editing, the irony of that. But the amount of editing that needs to take place in order for this documentary to actually be able to flow and convey emotion from people that may not be that into racing is massive. Like a lot needs to go on. Like one of the things that they didn't get right was the narration, but they're going to replace the kind of stand-in narrator that they had. They didn't say who it was, but the voice was familiar. He's done other work, and he does great work. But they're going to replace it with Michael Fassbender for whatever reason. I don't know why. I mean, yeah, he's an F1 enthusiast, but so are thousands of other actors. But they're going to replace him with Michael Fassbender. He's going to do the narration in the finished film. But this documentary is really long. It's good. There's a lot in there, but they go off on tangents. Because they started out talking about like the excitement and everything with F1 and the danger. They start out with crash that took place 16 years ago, and the driver was able to walk out completely unscathed. And in fact, he got into another car and finished the race. And so that compared to how it used to be, it's just night and day. And so a lot of this film was a big dedication to the late Professor Sid Watkins, who they talk about towards the end of the documentary, but it's all building up to that. And Sid Watkins, he died very recently. And so why they didn't put a dedication in this, which would have been a significantly better ending than what's in there now, which is just basically, what was that? You just replayed the beginning. What was the point? Yeah, it would make even that little change would make this documentary so much better. So this documentary is now, I would say, if you're a die-hard F1 fan, yeah, go see it. Even though a lot of this footage you've probably already seen, a lot of the stories you already know. But if you're not a fan, you are going to hate this documentary because how it is now, it doesn't flow well at all. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. Like some stories it focuses on for like half an hour and then like other things it talks about for like 30 seconds. And then they would talk about like Ayrton Senna at one point in time in the middle of the film and how that really changed a lot of people, because he was one of the most beloved drivers. And then to have him killed, and like when they were talking about that in the middle, they just kind of mentioned it, and then at the end, you could tell they were building up towards it, and then they talk about it for like 2 minutes, and you're just thinking, what? You just spent like 20 minutes or however long it was a long time, talking about a rivalry between Niki Lauda and James Hunt. What that should have just taken up about 3 minutes and no more than that, as opposed to showing like every single race that they did. This documentary is all over the place. Don't see it. If you're a die-hard fan, check it out. You don't need to see it in the theater. You can watch it at home. The theater isn't going to do like much. I like seeing it in the theater because I got to see it with, like Eccleston, all of the drivers, and that was really cool. It was a cool moment and an irreplaceable moment that would never happen again in my life. But yeah, you don't need to see this in a theater. You don't need to see this at all in the state it's in right now. Like it needs some life support. How it is now, it's just too much. It's too much information in there, and I like a good story. I can watch a long, long story. But how this was, people were checking their watches. That's how long this was, and there was still like half a documentary left to go. So it needs some heavy editing. This needs the knife to cut a lot out in order to make this a watchable film. Kind of like the difference between the final cut of Senna and the director's cut of Senna. The director's cut of Senna is almost completely unwatchable, but the final cut is really, really good. And like, if they were trying to go for any sort of emotion in one, they lost that. It just got lost in this mass of black smoke and fire. If you like crashes, you're gonna love this because they show so many crashes. But because there's so much that's in there, it gets to the point to where you don't really feel the emotions that they're trying to get you to feel because they just keep showing crash after crash after crash. And without like the build up of some of the drivers, because some of them they give like a lot of background, and then you're just like, wow, like you're really feeling with that. You see their families, you see their friends, the interviews, and then the crash that killed them, because this used to be an extremely, extremely dangerous sport. At one point in time they had like a death every month for I think 4 months, and of these huge racing stars, and nothing was changing. Just the cars kept getting faster and lighter, but the safety wasn't getting up to speed with the cars. And so it wasn't until Sir Sid Watkins came in, or Professor Sid Watkins came in, and helped change all of that. And it really changed the face of F1 to the point to where the drivers now don't have to worry if they're going to be able to finish the race at all or come out of there with their lives or from being burned. Like Niki Lauda, he was completely burned. Like his wife could only recognize his feet. And it's devastating, like really devastating. But all of that gets lost with how the documentary is now. So they really need to do some work on it. A lot of work. If you're watching this, please do some editing to do justice to this documentary. So, I will see you all next time. Until then.